As my Valorant settings guide, we'll start off with general and talk about the enemy highlight color first. So in simple terms, red and yellow are my recommended ones because they are just simply brighter than purple. In non-simple terms, red and yellow and green are all easier colors for our eyes to see and to track and to see at long distances and that kind of stuff. And blue and purple tend to not be that good. So I wouldn't recommend purple for that reason. If you are used to purple, then you might be fine just like not changing it. It's not a massive change, to be honest. Like, it's not going to change a massive amount. But I would recommend red and yellow if you don't have an opinion. If you are using purple, it'd probably be fine for you to stay using purple. Sensitivity. I prefer the range of between 160 and 360 eDPI. That's in 800 DPI. That is 0.2 to 0.45. I'm within that range here. I like this range because it feels like you don't have to swing your mouse off the desk to like do a 360 or to do a 180. At the same time as you have a lot of precision because your mouse is not too fast. So yeah, that's what I like about this range. Info mouse, generally want that off for the 99% of players. Raw input buffer, I think you only have this on, so you only have this off when your mouse is below 1k polling rate. If it's anything like if it's 1k plus, you're always going to have raw input buffer on. The map. So the map is something that I see a lot of people get wrong when I look at student VODs especially. It seems like majority of the time, the map is not very good. And the main thing with the map, which is objective, is that you need to be able to see all the map at all times. In my opinion, at least. I think that, I say in my opinion, it is objective, really. Realistically, to be good at the game and to know, to see, or be completely aware of what's happening on the map, you need to see all the map, regardless of opinion, really. And to do that, you generally don't want to have keep player centered on. So usually this is like the only setting you really need to have off, along with minimap cones being the only setting you need to make sure you have on. Rotation is fine if you want to have rotation, as long as you can see the whole map. Always the same side or based on side, exactly the same. If you can see the whole map, it doesn't matter. Minimap size, I prefer 1, like the default 1. Just because I think it's like the best size, really. 0.8 I think is a bit too small. 1.2 I think is massive, but way too big. A range in between, like near 1, like 0.9, whatever, would be fine too if you want to use that. As long as it's like around this size, I think is fine. Minimap zoom is 0.89. This is because there's some maps where if you have it on 1, it will actually cut off some of the sides. You can see on Ascent it just about doesn't cut off anything. But I think there's maps like Split, where it actually cuts off at the back of B site and things like that. So I have it on 0.89 because it fits everything on. I've already gone over the vision cones. You want those on because your teammate, you want to be able to see what your teammates see, basically on the minimap, right? Privacy is all subjective and that kind of stuff. That's fine. Show new player tips, also subjective. I would recommend them off, to be honest, but you can have them on if you want to. First player handedness or first person handedness. This is going to be based on your dominant eye. So if I have a left dominant eye, so I have it on the left. If you have a right dominant eye, you'll have it on the right. If you don't, you can also not care and just pick one and then get used to it. That also works completely fine too, probably. Always show inventory. I have this on because I used to make lineups using that part of the inventory. I don't anymore, but I still have it on anyway. Personal preference, you can have it off if you really want to. If you want to. Player loadout is always visible. I have that off because it's a lot of clutter. Cycle stuff I don't have on because I don't use the mouse wheel to cycle through my weapons or the spike. So I don't really care about these settings. They're just default. Show mature content I have on, but you can have it off. Show corpses I have off. You can have it on if you really want to, but I recommend having it off. I think the holograms are better, ever so slightly. Show blood, you can have this on or off. This is, I think the majority of players have the show blood on, and I think for the majority of players it probably works better, but I prefer the sparks personally, so I have a show blood off. Instability indicators on, just so you can see when you're like losing connection and when your connection's unstable. Completely fine. You can have it off if you want to, but for the most part, to have it on. Network buffering on minimum. Show bullet traces is a really important setting because when someone's spraying through a smoke, unless you're using the Phantom, you'll be able to see their traces. And that's really valuable to like track where they are in the smoke, where they're spraying from, and try and shoot them back through the smoke. And all the rest are observer stuff on this part. So controls is next, and I have changed my controls a bit. So I've swapped my C and my E around. The reason why I did this is because I used to play Jet, and Jet has dash on E, and I didn't want to take my fingers off the directional buttons when I dashed, and I would have to do that to press E. So instead, I decided to rebind it to C. So the main thing here is to make sure that when we have movement abilities, is that we don't take our fingers off our movement keys, WASD. So And it doesn't really matter what hotkeys you use to do that, but just make sure that your fingers don't leave WASD when you're intending to use movement abilities. Same goes with Raze as well. Raze usually has it on Q, so I swapped my Blast Pack to C and my Paint Shells to Q. We'll go back through here as well. The main thing here is make sure Toggle Walk and Toggle Crouch are off, because it's much more snappy and more responsive to have them on hold than it is to have them on toggle. That's basically all you need to know in this part. Equipment. So this is your default. The one thing that I want to talk about, a couple of things I want to talk about, is sniper rifle aim hold and toggle zoom level, which is important for the sniper rifle aim hold. So this makes you a lot more fluid when taking fights with the operator. You'll see a lot of operator players in the pro level use this. Tens, for instance, I'm pretty sure uses hold. I could be wrong, he changes settings a lot, but I'm pretty sure I have seen him use hold, and I'm pretty sure he does use hold. Toggle, I'm pretty sure most high-level operator players do. Aspas definitely uses hold. Toggle zoom level is obviously a kind of a requirement when you have hold, because you can't toggle into the zoom level. You don't technically need the second zoom level. I have it on middle mouse. I don't use it too much, and it technically can be a bit clunky on middle mouse because I have to take off my left click, my finger off left click to click the middle mouse. So ideally, you don't want that to happen. So if you do have a toggle zoom level, I would put it on like a different mouse button. I'll put it on like mouse button 2, or like a thumb button 1 or 2. Reload is R, that's fine. And then all this is fine. I would leave this all as default, I think. And the same over here as well. The only thing that would maybe change, obviously, is inspect and use object. I think inspect default might be F. I could be wrong. Maybe it's Y. I can't remember. But use object, I have an F, which I'm not sure if it's default or not, because I think it might be inspect. But yeah, I have inspect on thumb mouse button, which are, probably not the best place to put it, but I will. And I've used spike on 4, which I also recommend you have. And that's it for this. Communication, I have my thumb button 2 for my team's voice. I actually recommend you don't use your mouse at all for voice push to talk. I have it on because it's simply what I've got used to. And I wouldn't necessarily recommend it getting used to it now, because it can feel a bit like your right hand is doing a lot when you're like shooting and talking at the same time. So I would recommend maybe putting it on your keyboard somewhere. The other thing as well is ping as well. Z might be a bit awkward for some people. So feel free to change that. There was also another one as well that I wanted to look at. Yeah, open armory. So some people like to have it on numpad. So that's like by menu, right? You can put the by menu on numpad. That's fine. It's not an action ability. So what I mean, like an action hotkey. So what I mean is like you're not going to be under any pressure when you use this anyway, because it's going to be a by phase. So it doesn't really matter what it's binded to. So you can bind it to anything. Same with like the combat report, right? You're not really going to be in any danger because you're going to be dead. So, or you're going to be in the by phase. So you can have it on you can have it binded to anything. The semicolon on the show teammates loadouts, I would have on. The reason for this is because you don't have to ask if someone has a flash or whatever. You can just look. So I recommend having this on, especially in lower ranks. I recommend having this on. But in higher ranks, you can probably just communicate. It's completely fine. Yeah, that's pretty much it for the interface. There's nothing else here. A lot of this is like spectator observer, so it doesn't really matter. Crosshair. So the crosshair can be anything as long as it's not overly distracting. Like it's not like super dynamic or it's not massive. But otherwise you can have anything. The main thing with the crosshair is to not change it. To keep it the same, keep it consistent, and get used to it. Same with like it's kind of the same as the sensitivity, really, with the sense. You just want to make sure that you don't change your sensitivity that much because you want to get used to it. Exactly the same here with the crosshair. You just want to get used to it, and that's it. The video settings, the main thing is like this is all like whatever, right? You can just have this is all personal preference. The one thing that I want to talk about though is the max FPS always, like the FPS cap. So you'll see here if I press it on, if I go on to stats as well, and I add in my frame time. I'm on 5 ms for a frame time, right? So yeah, 5 ms. So if I go on to turn this off, it fluctuates more, but I have a faster frame time. So I prefer to have a faster frame time. So I uncap my FPS simply. I think if you're on a lower end system, I would recommend limiting your FPS though. I'm not super informed on this stuff, so it might be better to do your own research, but that's my conclusion. It might be like maybe a tiny bit wrong or wrong here and there, wrong in specific circumstances. So I'll do your own research on that, but for the most part, I would recommend having FPS unlimited. Graphics quality, I personally have low settings. Literally the main setting to know is multi-threaded rendering and to have this on. I think there might be very specific situations where you don't have it on. Yeah, so probably like lower end systems, as it says in this little tooltip, you probably have it off in that situation. Otherwise, I would have it on majority of the time, for the most part. All the rest is personal preference. I prefer low settings to get the most out of my FPS. I would recommend the same. But if you really don't like the look of low settings, because honestly, to be honest, it doesn't look nice, you might as well like put it on medium, put it on high, see how that goes. In terms of stats, there's actually a preset thing here now, which I've never used before. Must be a fairly new setting. Never used it, not going to, I don't think. And I have client FPS server tick rate on. You don't really need server tick rate on. I prefer it on because it puts my FPS more centrally in the screen, which I prefer. Not my FPS, my ping more centrally in the screen, which I prefer. Next one down is network, which is my ping basically. Then packet loss, which is graph, which you'll see over on the right, on the top right. My packet loss graph, so I can see all my packet loss on a graph. And also the most important one, in my opinion, that if you don't want to have any of these stat stuff on, I would definitely put on the client FPS, but I would also put on the shooting error if you are, especially if you're a new player or if you're like a lower ranked player. I would have this on as graph only, because then you can see when you're like shooting wrong. Basically, as you can see, I've gone over this before and I will go over it in the future again. But as you can see, I'll get these yellow lines when I'm shooting, when I'm standing still, and I'm going to get blue lines when I'm shooting and running. And that's basically the main premise of it. You want to eliminate as much of the blue as possible when you're shooting. And there's other things to it as well, but I'll go over that in the future. Probably in the same like sort of series I'm going to do here for this guide. So I think that's it for the settings. There's audio stuff. Maybe the only thing to go over is maybe HRTF, to make sure you've got spatial audio disabled if you want to have it on. That's pretty much it. So yeah, that's it for the guide. I hope you enjoyed, and I'll see you in my next one.